Reinhardt is looking to be one of the strongest and most impactful solo carry tanks in the game of Overwatch. Well, yes, it's definitely true that Reinhardt's shield got nerfed immensely. This doesn't mean that Reinhardt is a less powerful character. In fact, Reinhardt might be more powerful now than he ever has been. In this guide, we're going to be breaking down Reinhardt's kit so that you can maximize impact for each and every ability, and then we're going to tell you how to play Reinhardt to his maximum effectiveness so that you can hard carry each and every game you play, creating tons of space for your team and making these high impact plays that will literally win you game after game. With all that being said, let's just jump right into it, shall we? Reinhardt has been the Overwatch defining tank for the longest time. He's incredibly well known and he's one of the biggest things that people think about when they think about a tank in Overwatch. Now on top of this, Blizzard did an amazing job with Reinhardt while somehow giving you a character who has a shield on them that's made to protect their team and made to create space. Space is a specific term that I'm going to get to later on, so definitely wait for that because that's one of the most important things you need to understand when playing tank. But they managed to make this insanely fun and dynamic main tank that also has the ability to make plays all on their own with Earth Shatter, Fire Strike, and just overall being incredibly impactful with when they engage and how they engage. So in order to master Reinhardt, you need to understand a lot of different things about him. You specifically need to understand how to get your team into the fight so that they can easily do damage, how to create that constant pressure, and we're going to be breaking down every single bit of that. But before we do, let's first break down each and every one of Reinhardt's abilities and what you need to be doing to get the most impact. So all that being said, let's jump over to Reinhardt's first ability, which is actually his passive. Reinhardt's passive is called Steadfast, which Steadfast is incredibly powerful. The thing that makes Steadfast so powerful and how it really helps Reinhardt as a character is Steadfast gives Reinhardt resistant to knockback effects. So this means things like Doomfist punches, Lucio boops, Hammond boops as well. This makes Reinhardt incredibly resistant to these types of things. Some of you might have played Reinhardt before he was given a Steadfast patch, the Steadfast ability. He was kind of like a ragdoll. He could be thrown up, thrown around. This prevents him from doing that. This means that Reinhardt can walk to the places he wants to go, which is what we would call space, and he gets to maintain that space, and it's not easy for enemies to displace him, move him around, all that kind of stuff. That being said, he's still affected the same against things like Roadhog Hook, so things that directly displace an enemy, something like a Sigma ult, his Gravitic Flux, those things will still affect Reinhardt the exact same way, but specific CC effects such as Flail, such as Lucio Boop, some of the things we talked about before, Steadfast will definitely prevent a lot of that from happening. It's a percentage reduction, so it means that overall things will not affect Reinhardt. Now, some important ones right now in the meta that will affect Rein the same, probably the most important thing, Orissa's Halt. Orissa's Halt actually affects Reinhardt the exact same as it ever has, so it doesn't give him any resistance to that. So that's something that you really want to be actively thinking about blocking with your shield. If there's a shield protection, your shield can actually block the pull from the Orisa, and you could also block it for your team. So that's something that you can position yourself in a way that can actively stop Orisa pull. But anyways, now specifically, let's talk really quickly about Reinhardt's Rocket Hammer, which is just his primary weapon. The thing about Reinhardt Rocket Hammer is that it does 75 damage per swing, and it has a max range of 5 meters. The thing about Reinhardt's hammer is you can actually move your camera angle to get more swing time. This is going to be important later when we really talk about Reinhardt's ultimate, because when enemies are on the ground, you can actually move your camera while you swing to get more damage on targets that are downed. That's something that is really important with Rocket Hammer, and 75 damage is no small amount of damage. I mean, you can get 3 swings on someone when they're earth shattered, so that's actually definitely going to be able to kill any of the squishies in the game, so keep that in mind. Anyways, let's move on to Reinhardt's Barrier Field. So the thing about Reinhardt's Barrier Field is it's actually recently got nerfed immensely, so it's not the 2000 HP shield that it once was, and that's important for a number of reasons. This means that Reinhardt is less of the stand around and hold a shield so your teammates could fire through. You never really wanted to play Reinhardt like this in the first place. What you wanted to do is choose your engage and disengage appropriately, but I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But first, what you need to understand is that you cannot allow your shield to be broken. You don't want your shield to ever be broken. You don't want to be entering the fight with your shield. It's okay if your body takes damage as long as you have some shield health for when you need it. Ideally, you want to be able to use that shield to block key cooldowns or use it when you're already in position, when you already claim space so that your allies can do damage to the enemy while being protected from your shield. It's incredibly important, and shield is definitely one of the big things about Reinhardt that make him a main tank. It helps him claim that space. Let's move on to Reinhardt's Charge. This is a very impactful ability from Reinhardt. Anything that's pinned into a wall from Rein does 3 it does automatically 300 damage. If you get bumped by Rein and he don't actually pin anything, it does 50, so it still will do some damage. Something that's really important to understand with charge is it will move you 200% faster, but you need to be pretty direct if you actually want to pin somebody. It's really easy to push people off to the side, which if you actually slam everyone down and you try to use your Reinhardt's charge, you could boop them all away, so sometimes it's better to swing at them. I'll talk about that a little bit more later as well, but charge is definitely a powerful ability. Don't look to use this ability all that much unless you're using it with intent. One of the big problems with Reinhardt's is they'll see an opportunity to get one pin, they'll try to pin across the map, and even if they pin them, the enemy will get saved, they'll get bubbled, they'll get armor packed, they'll get healed up, or maybe Reinhardt will get stunned out of it. He's easily stunned or he's easily CC'd or even killed while he's charging. So if you look for charges in the mid fight, look for short charges that don't push you too far away. You don't want to be going across the map and taking someone with you. That's usually not favorable for you to do. So that being said, you really need to think about the charge intent before you press that shift button, before you press that charge button. If you're on controller, you really need to think about what exactly is your purpose and how much impact, what can mess you up. You need to be thinking about cooldown, CC, all that stuff. And honestly, most of the time, the correct answer is to not charge at all. Now, let's move on to Reinhardt's Fire Strike, and this is a really important ability for Reinhardt for this specific reason. Now, before we get to that, I want to tell you really quickly about GameLeap.com. We're the #1 educational Overwatch coaching platform, and you should definitely check it out. I'm going to keep this short and sweet, but if you want to know more, just wait to the end of the video, and I'll tell you exactly why you should get GameLeap. Anyways, until then, enjoy the rest of the video. Reinhardt wants to build up his Earth Shatter as fast as possible because it's an incredibly powerful ability. If Reinhardt can build up Earth Shatter really fast, he can get it before the enemy Rein, he can catch that Rein by surprise, or if he could get it really fast at the mid fight, he can get it before the team fight is over, meaning he could turn a close fight. That's how Reinhardt can carry. One of the best ways to get your ultimate incredibly fast is by getting these fire strikes that can go through many members of the enemy team. You know, 4 or 5 man fire strikes can really quickly build up that ultimate charge, which is exactly what you want to do. Fire strike importantly does 100 damage and it travels pretty fast. It's 25 meters per second, so it's a pretty fast ability. It's not incredibly fast, so it still can be dodged if it's done far away. There's a few things you need to think about. Things like Sigma's kinetic grasp, Diva's defensive matrix, both of these can eat it and neutralize it. You don't really want them to use these on your fire strike if at all possible. You want to try to bait these out. Also, things like Zarya bubble can actually benefit from fire strike, so keep that in mind. If the enemy team has a Zarya, you might not want to fire strike right off of spawn. And then also something like Genji is a very important one. This happens a lot, especially when I play Genji in ranked. If a Reinhardt will fire strike into me and I reflect it into his team, it can be one of the best ways that Genji's can get ultimate, which not only do you not get ultimate, but you give that Genji his Dragon Blade that much faster. That can be a big way that you throw the game, so that's really important. And then on top of that, the fire striking, you really want to try to like kind of put it by surprise. You can peek out from natural cover and fire strike in a way that will go through the enemy team and they won't really have that much time to react, so you can really build up that precious ult charge, and you want to just keep building up that Earth Shatter. Now, there are some downsides to fire strike, specifically in the Rein v Rein matchup. I'm going to talk about that, but that's specifically talking about Earth Shatter. So these kind of tie hand in hand because you want to build up your Earth Shatter with your fire strike, which is true. We already talked about that before, but Earth Shatter is one of Reinhardt's most powerful ability, and now we're gonna kind of transition to talking about Earth Shatter. The thing about Earth Shatter is it can be game winning, right? If it doesn't get blocked, if the enemy team doesn't block it, and you get enough people around it, most of the time they want to stack objectives, stack payload. It's really easy to get multiple people with Earth Shatter, and it's a pretty long CC. It's a 3-second knockdown, which is actually quite a long time. It takes only 0.9 seconds per swing, so you can do a guaranteed 75 damage times 3 to enemies, which means you can kill every single squishy that's 200 HP or less, and you can also do tons of damage to tanks. They're going to take 50 damage from the Earth Shatter itself, so overall it does quite a bit of damage. Something that you want to be looking for in the Rein v Rein matchup is, of course, blocking their Earth Shatter and Earth Shattering them as well. Now, the important thing to understand about this and talking about fire strike is if you actually fire strike and the enemy Rein has shatter, they can respond to the animation of your fire strike by shattering you and your whole team. You can do the exact same thing to Rein. This is why it's really important to track when the enemy Rein has earth shatter, how many swings he has done, how much fire strikes he has hit, how many fire strikes has he hit on you, and that also can give you an advantage because a Reinhardt can't swing in, he can't be aggressive, he can't put on pressure if he's trying to play around an earth shatter. So the Rein who is more efficient with his fire strikes, more efficient push it with his space taking, he does more damage on average. This kind of Rein gets Earth Shatter more consistently, which also enables him to play even more aggressive. It's like a cascade effect. So if you're a worse Rein and you don't get Earth Shatter as much, then you're gonna have to be forced to play more passive because you know the enemy Rein has Earth Shatter, and then it could just be worse and worse for your team. You're not gonna be creating as much space, there's gonna be more pressure on you, and then even if that Earth Shatter doesn't come, you might lose anyways. So that's a really big one. Earth Shatter also can go through things like payload. It can go and climb upstairs. It actually has a climbing hitbox in the air, so even if you jump, you're not gonna jump over a fire strike. So that's something really important to understand. It is one of Reinhardt's most powerful abilities. You can use it to catch enemies by surprise. You can Earth Shatter right when a shield goes down to get everyone behind it. When an Orisa shield's right about to break, you can Earth Shatter. These are some of the big things that you can do with Earth Shatter to have really high impact. Think about creative ways to use it, but more than anything, you really want to try to build it up consistently and look to secure kills. You don't have to secure a lot of kills with Earth Shatter. You just want to try and get some value out of it and confirm some kills. And like I talked about before, if you Earth Shatter enemies on the ground, a lot of times you really want to swing your hammer instead of charging, because often if you charge enemies away, it could push all of the enemies away from your team and making it hard to follow up on them. And you can swing, if you move your camera, you can hit everyone on the ground and do tons more overall damage. Anyways, with all of Reinhardt's abilities getting out of the way, let me talk about one of the biggest things that you need to understand when playing Reinhardt. We're going to transition right over to his playstyle, and the biggest thing you need to understand when playing Reinhardt is space. What Reinhardt and most main tanks want to do is create this thing called space. Now, you might be asking, what is space? So space is the areas that you can control and claim on the map that allow you and your team to do effective damage and heals from. Okay, let me explain. When pushing up on a choke point, if you push through the choke point, your team can push through as well. This means that they can get better angles. This means they're in better position to do damage. So you've all heard about people talking about positioning, right? That's a bad position. This is a good position. Now, so while we could talk about what is a good or bad position or not, what creating space does is that it allows your team to take better positioning for every single situation. Essentially, you're claiming possible positioning. So a positioning might be good, but it's contested by the enemy. What a main tank does and what Rein wants to do is push through a choke, push through that space, give your team ability to take that positioning and be more effective as a threat. I'm sure that you have had games, or maybe you've felt these games where you're a DPS or you're a support, if you've ever played these roles in role queue, playing an off role, and your tanks don't move. They don't go anywhere. They stay right at the choke, and it doesn't matter what you do. It feels like there's no room for you to operate. You're constantly trying to get in, but you take damage. You are under fire. You don't feel like you ever have any room to breathe. That's what a main tank wants to do. He wants to put on pressure. He wants to push through, be aggressive, and create that space. So something that's important to understand when taking space, you don't need to take it just with your shield. If your shield is up and you're protected, you can get healed up easily. No one's under fire from behind your shield. They're protected. It doesn't matter if you're at 200 HP, you can get healed up. What you want to do is maintain a little bit of that shield health and balance between shield and taking damage yourself as you push up aggressively. You could swing onto the enemy, put pressure on them so that they have to back up for heals. This creates even more space. Now, there's a balance act, right? There's a balancing act where you don't want to actually get punished for it. You don't want to die, but at the same time, the biggest problem that I see is particularly at the lower ranks. This happens way often, even all the way up to masters and low GM. Main tanks will not push in aggressively. What you need to do is you really need to push aggressively, especially as Rein. Take that space, claim it, and give you much more room for your DPS. I promise you, if you do this consistently, your DPS will be able to pop off more and more and more. They'll be able to do more than they ever would with a really passive tank that just stands at choke. His shield gets destroyed. He has to back up, wait for his shield to get fully charged again. And so far, his DPS have done nothing because they've never been in. As a tank, this is your job, and this is one of the things that if you can master this aggressive playstyle, that is how you climb. That is how you have the most impact, and that is how you enable your team to have way more impact. One of the best ways to actually do this is by shield stepping. Now, what shield stepping is when you're walking forward, drop your shield and walk forward, and then you could bring your shield back up. It's called shield stepping. I'll show an example of it right here. But essentially what shield stepping is it allows you to get into the enemy team. It allows you to move a little bit faster and also balance the damage that your health total and your shield health takes, so that when you're actually on the enemy, you're ready to brawl, you're ready to fight, okay? So that, in a nutshell, is how you want to play Rein. You really want to be all the ability things we talked about. You want to be building that Earth Shatter. You you want to be taking space, and space is a big one to understand. So that is essentially what you're doing as main tank. I know a lot of main tank players really feel like they can't do anything. No matter what they do, they don't have impact, but often, most of the time, tanks are playing hyper passively, incredibly passively. The more space you create, the easier it is on your team, the easier it is for your team to do heals, the easier it is for your team to do damage, get picks. Never this mentality of, we need to get a pick and then I can push in. No, what you want to do is you want to take that space so it's easier for your team to get picks. It's easier for your team to create that pressure. And this includes being on defense. Even if you're on defense, you could still push into the enemy aggressively. If they start to push in, you could push back. Don't let them take space for free. Don't let them to take choke for free. You can give them a little bit of space if they vie for it. If you're going to get punished if you maintain that space for too long, but you want to fight for it, essentially. What you don't want to do is let them take an area of the map for free without going under any sort of pressure, without any sort of resistance. You are the front line. You are the engager. You are the dictator. As a main tank, as a Reinhardt, you decide the engagements, you decide the disengagements, you decide when space is taken and when you allow space to be taken. This is all the important things on Rein, and I feel like if you can master this, if you can learn how to do this to the maximum effectiveness, you'll definitely climb, and Reinhardt is one of the most fun main tanks that you could play in the game of Overwatch. Really, guys, if you haven't given Reinhardt a shot, definitely try him because Reinhardt is so fun, and I really hope this guide has been helpful for you. If you felt like this guide has helped you, there's way more just like it on GameLeap.com. We have in-depth guides that go into in-depth VOD reviews, gameplay analysis, Rein v Rein matchups that can get you caught up to speed on mastering Reinhardt as quickly as possible. And I know there's tons of Overwatch content out there, but this is the only place where you can find handcrafted Grandmaster coaching content that will give you the most pound-for-pound quality control, and your time is precious and valuable. We don't want you to be spending hundreds or thousands of hours practicing the wrong thing. So do yourself a favor and click the link here and go check out GameLeap.com. Now, all that being said, I know this guide has been a little bit different from my last guides. This comes off as more fluid. I'm not really giving you a point-by-point basis. I want you to understand how important it is for you to take space, be aggressive, claim space. I'm telling you guys, if you take all these things in this guide to heart, you'll be that much closer to being that masterful Rein that every single player wants to have on their team, because it allows them to pop off and it allows them to do even more. And you're also going to be hard carrying with these insane 5 and 6 man shatters. Anyways, that's all I have for you today. I hope this guide has been extremely helpful for you. Any questions, please leave them in the comments down below. I know that specifically taking space is a topic that many people throw around, but no one really wants to lay it on the line and explain it. I can definitely try to break it down for you more if you don't quite understand, because it's one of the most important topics that anyone should understand in Overwatch. So space is definitely incredibly important. Anyways, that's all I have. I'm Coach Mills, and until next time.